Only other thing I want to just say is that, this information tonight to provide you with the information, the background, resources, and advice so that you can help support your students so that they engage in a very purposeful, thoughtful academic planning and preparation for fall. And that whole season of registration will begin in early April. So I am going to turn things over to my colleague, Sarah, to kick off the webinar. If you'll give us just a second. So welcome again to tonight's webinar.
Good evening, everyone. If you're on different time zones, good afternoon, good morning, good night. It's great to see so many participants joining us this evening, and we're really grateful for your attention and attendance. My name is Sarah Montez, and I'm the Executive Director and Assistant Dean for Undergraduate Advising in the Newcomb-Tulane College, and I'm really pleased to be joined with tonight with my colleague Tamar, who will also introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tamar Stark, and I'm a Senior Academic and Career Advisor. And I primarily work with liberal arts students and have been advising students for about 12 years at Tulane. Welcome.
So we have a relatively full set of objectives for our meeting today. The first objective will be to cover the pretty unique advising model at Tulane. We always like to clarify what that model looks like for your students so that you can help them understand who to go to when and those kinds of things. We're also going to outline and describe the process that your students will go through in terms of registration. We'll talk about things like time tickets and the timeline and when registration begins and ends and those kinds of things. We'll talk about the advisor's specific role in registration and then your students' role and responsibilities with regards to registration. And we'll give you some advice about how you can support your students. We'll also share some helpful reminders and resources. We'll demonstrate some of our systems to show you that what your students use to navigate their planning and what your advisors will use, what our advisors use to help your students as well. And then we'll have time, like Penny mentioned, to take your questions at the end. So as I mentioned, our advising model at Tulane is quite unique. If anyone on this call might remember a relatively older commercial that Verizon mobile phones had, where you would see somebody holding their phone and they would say, "Can you hear me now? Having trouble to connect." And then they would spread out the camera and you would see this huge set of team members behind that person holding the phone, supporting that client of the phone company. That's the idea behind the Tulane model for advising. Your student is surrounded with support in terms of advising. They start their career at Tulane with one advisor, typically their academic advisor in Newcomb-Tulane College. And then they gain advisors along the way. They may gain more than what you see here on the screen, which is 3. They may gain just one more beyond us, but there's a lot of support and students are really helped along the way with their academic planning. So we have the academic advisor, like I said, that person is assigned to them starting when they deposit at Tulane on May 1st, typically prior to their freshman year. They typically keep the same advisor for about a year, but sometimes their advisor changes for a variety of reasons. And then we rebalance caseloads every year and make sure that students are assigned to an advisor who specializes in their interest area. So our team of advisors comprises of about 30 staff members, and they each carry a caseload of advisees. And they also are specialists. So Tamar mentioned that she's a liberal arts specialist. So she works primarily with students who are pursuing degrees in the School of Liberal Arts. The academic advisor's role is going to be spelled out in more detail in a future slide, so I won't go into more details on that. Then you have the major advisor. And at Tulane, we have a variety of kinds of major advisors, 2 main types. We have faculty advisors and staff major advisors. And kind of depends on what your student is pursuing in terms of a major. That is what will determine what kind of major advisor they get. If your student is pursuing a major in the School of Liberal Arts or the School of Science and Engineering, it's most likely that they will have a major advisor who's also a faculty member. So that is a faculty advising model. And then if your student is pursuing a degree in the School of Business, the School of Public Health, or the School of Architecture, they use more of a staff model, so professional staff model of advising in those areas. And then our office in Newcomb-Tulane College, our academic advising office, also includes a very specialized group of advisors that are a pre-professional advising staff. And our pre-professional advisors support all students who identify as pre-health or pre-law students. And it's an additional service open to all students and so our academic advisors and our major advisors will refer these pre-health and pre-law students to work with the pre-health and pre-law team, the pre-professional advising team, to help really get them supported on the specialized needs that they have in terms of preparing for applications for law school, medical school, physical therapy school, and all sorts of different things. You can read more about our philosophy of advising at Tulane if you go to the website that's on the screen. All right, Tamar?
Yeah, so now I'll share a little bit of information about our role as academic advisors and how we work with your students. We help students with their course selection. So, you know, as they matriculate into Tulane, we will meet with them to build their first schedule, and we want to meet with your students every semester to help them build their schedule for the future semester and summers as well. We also work with them on academic planning, so helping them kind of dream about what they might want to major in, maybe minor in, and then plan accordingly. So as Sarah mentioned, the major advisor, once that student determines what major they do, the major advisor will really help that student through that major, but we help with the planning with their core curriculum, as well as thinking about future into their major or minor. We also monitor their degree requirements and their academic progress to make sure that they're staying on track and taking the courses that will keep them moving forward. The major, minor, and interdisciplinary and specialized study options and exploration is really, again, about like that dreaming, like how do they maybe want to combine different disciplines or, you know, reach their career goals. We also help navigate changes between majors or schools. So sometimes students decide to make a change in their major, and maybe that might mean a change in a school that might have different core requirements. So we help through that process. We also help the student understand all of the university policies and procedures for Newcomb-Tulane College, as well as the university. We help with transfer credit review. So if a student is interested in taking summer classes outside of Tulane, we help them with that pre-approval process. And we help them transfer the credit back in once they've completed that transfer class. We also help students who might need to withdraw from either one or more classes during a semester or take a leave of absence for a semester or 2 semesters. We help them figure out if that makes sense for them and then help them through that process if it does. And then as Sarah mentioned, we help with pre-professional planning and preparation by working closely with our pre-professional advisors and also making the appropriate referrals.
Thanks, Tamar. I also just wanted to add one thing, that the philosophy of advising at Tulane is that advising is not absolutely mandatory, but we make it very hard for students to avoid us because we have a lot of metrics that we use to identify the students that really need to see us. Maybe it's a student it's time for them to declare a major, we'll send outreach. If it's their second semester and we haven't seen them yet that semester and they're a first-year student, we'll send outreach. So we're tracking a lot of that on the back end for our students, and we find that that's really effective. When a student, however, needs additional support or maybe a little extra nudge or motivation to come in, then we will use additional tactics. We call it intrusive advising. We don't really like that term that much, but we use additional tactics to really help those students who might be more at risk or more at risk for really, you know, not succeeding that semester, maybe not succeeding in a number of classes for some reason or another, to make sure that they connect with us sooner rather than later. All right, let's see. All right, I think this one's me, right, Tamara?
Yep.
Yeah, so advising resources. Another question we get a lot from families and from students is, I don't know who my advisor is. There's a lot of ways for students to figure out who their advisor is. And we'll go over the degree audit in a little bit, but that's sort of the technical way that students can see it in Gibson. Their academic advisor will always be listed in their degree audit. But it's really simple to connect with us. We have a phone number right there on the slide. It's on our website. And anyone can email or call us at basically anytime. It's usually a less than a couple hours response time if it's a business day, and usually the phone is picked up immediately. And our support staff that monitor the line can get back to students right away and let them know who their advisor is and how they can connect with their staff member. All right.
So this is what you're all here for, registration. And how does it work at Tulane? So we have a priority registration window it starts on April 5th, and it goes through for about 2 weeks. Students are assigned time tickets, and that their time ticket is based on how many credits they've actually earned, not including what they're currently enrolled in and haven't earned grades for yet. So we get a lot of questions from students. My time ticket doesn't seem like it's right. Like it's too late. All my friends are, their time ticket is earlier, but I always ask them to check, and the registrar has a link on their website where you can actually see the time ticket breakdown based on credit hours. So I always have the student check how many credits have you actually earned, and then we look at that together. And it's pretty much always accurate. So registration does take place over a number of days. The time ticket is the time that your student's registration opens, and it stays open all the way through the registration period, through the summer, and into the first couple weeks of classes. So that first time that they're able to actually hit that submit button is just the beginning of their registration. Students will roll in to register each day, beginning at 8 a.m. and ending at 4 p.m. every hour, based on credits earned, highest to lowest. No students will roll in on the weekends. So that's why if, your student's friend is registering at 4 p.m. on a Friday and your student might not be registering until Monday, that's because there are no roll-in times over that weekend. And let's see, credit minimum and maximum. So students must register for a minimum of 12 credits each semester, and the maximum is set to 16 credits until everybody's had a chance during priority registration to register. And then everyone's credit limit will increase to 19 credits. So they'll be able to add another 3 credit class if they need to after priority registration has happened for everyone. Wait lists. So if a course has no available seats when your student is registering, and there is a wait list offered, it will show on the schedule of classes, and Sarah will look at that when we look at the schedule of classes in a few minutes. So students can get on a wait list if a wait list is offered. And the way wait lists work is if a seat becomes available, the student will receive an email at their Tulane email and will have 48 hours to register for the course. So they actually will need to go back into the schedule of classes, the register add drop tab, and add that class to their schedule. If no action is taken by the end of those 48 hours, they will be removed from the wait list. So it's important that students are checking their email daily if they're on a wait list. And the academic calendar, we have a link to the academic calendar, which is on the registrar's website, so that we always want students to be aware of those deadlines, last day to add a class in the beginning of the semester, and then the drop deadlines throughout the semester. Sarah, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I appreciate the way you laid that out tomorrow. It was great. I think the only thing I might just expand on a little bit would be about waitlists and why there might be waitlists for some classes and not others. Tulane has a number of classes that have what they call co-requisites, and we'll look at this in a minute. But if a class has 2 parts to the registration, then there's no waitlist typically available. But in most cases, especially for first year students and rising second year students, there's often an alternate class. And so we also encourage students to look for a different option as opposed to just waitlisting for classes. We do really like to see students registering for about 12 credits minimum when their time tickets open. So it's important to remain flexible, and we'll talk through that in a little bit. All right. So the advisor's role with regards to registration. So Tamara went over a few slides ago about our role generally, but when we're talking with students around this time of year and all the way through registration finishes in April, end of April, we are talking to students about their progress in their degree, what requirements make sense for them to take. We're looking at core curriculum, and also major exploration, often with these first year students. At this time in their development at Tulane, it's really common for a student to be straddling a few different interests. So we're gonna be strategic with them and recommend a number of classes that help them keep all of those options in play when it's reasonable. And we also recommend balance. So some students really like to check all the boxes off in their core curriculum in their first year or first year and a half. And that's often not a great strategy for success and academic success in particular. So we often are kind of countering students' impetus around that and helping them remember that they can complete their core curriculum in 4 years. That being said, we do like to see students engaging with their foreign language earlier rather than later. The language requirement can be onerous. It can be up to 3 semesters. So there are certain times when an advisor might push a student to take something that they weren't really excited about taking, and that is our role. We don't register students. We don't tell them what to take. We make recommendations and give them advice. Let's see. We also provide a service around specific course recommendations and curriculum recommendations. We have a newsletter called the Course Advisor that comes out about weekly or bi-weekly during registration periods. There's some amazing courses that are listed in that newsletter, and all of the students get it. The advisors also use it to help them learn more about classes that might be coming new on the books for that semester, or that are under registered, and maybe some students just haven't found it yet, but it's a really great class and it satisfies requirements. So that Course Advisor newsletter is a great tool. We don't, however, tend to recommend faculty or professors. That isn't our role, and we don't think that is a wise road to go down. Students often really want us to advise them on who's the best faculty member among these options. And best is a very, very, very subjective term, and it is not something that works well for us. We also don't tell students that there are easy classes and hard classes. You know, for some students, a studio art class is really, really easy, and other students, that's a very difficult class. It's so individualized. So we don't talk about that. We talk about, you know, what our students' strengths are, and we try to help them understand what options are good for them based on their own personality. And we help them also try to make informed choices. There are some data that they can gather around courses and faculty as well, using the rating data that comes out of course evaluations that's available through the Gibson portal. And we also always recommend that students talk to their faculty that they're taking classes with to get other recommendations for classes to take. We refer students to their specialists as well during these meetings about registration. And those might be advisors in the schools, majors, minors. We also, some students are in special cohort programs, and so we'll refer them to those advisors for help. We also, Tamar mentioned that students change in and out of majors or in and out of schools. We have a lot of curricular flexibility in our program, and with that comes sometimes, like, you might, as an advisor, recommend 3 courses for sure, and then up to 5 or 6 that will round out the rest of the schedule. And it's up to the student to make that decision around what they're going to take when the time comes for registration. I also want to mention how our students connect with us. So the best way this time of year to connect with an advisor is to schedule a 30-minute appointment using the online Make an Appointment link. When students use that portal, the system automatically knows who their assigned academic advisor is, and they'll see up to 2 weeks of availability when they log in there. They can book the appointment right through that system. They'll get a reminder email immediately when they book the appointment, and they will get a reminder email 1 day before. Many of our meetings are still virtual this semester, but we also have some advisors offering in person, and the students will see virtual or in person when they're scheduling those appointments. We also have, for lack of a better term, walk-in service for this year. That's been a virtual service. It's called Advisor of the Day, and that's from 10:15 to 4:30, I think, 4:15. Central Time every day, and that link is right there for you to see. Students can go to the Advisor of the Day for quick and urgent questions, and we see a lot of traffic of students using Advisor of the Day during this busy time of registration. We have pretty limited ability to squeeze in a comprehensive email advising, so very thorough email advising doesn't happen during peak registration dates in April. That's because our advisors are booked solid, usually for those 2 weeks solid. So email response time can be a little delayed during that time, but as you can see, there's lots of ways for students to engage with us in appointments or the walk-in service. If students feel like they can't figure out how to connect with their advisor and they're not getting response time, or they can't find an appointment that works with their schedule, then they can simply email advising@tulane.edu, or they can call our number to connect. And we have a very large team, and we will make sure that they are helped right away. Okay, Tamara?
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about the advisor's role. Now we want to talk a little bit about what we want our students to be doing as far as registration goes. So we definitely want them to know the registration time ticket and kind of put that on their calendar, so that maybe even with a reminder on their phone, so that they can hit that submit registration button right at their time. And their registration time ticket is available when they log into Gibson, and it should be right at the top in a blue banner. And they're already up on the students Gibson portal. We also want to make sure that there are no holds that will prevent them from registering during when their time ticket opens. So we want them to check for holds, which also should show up right at the top of their student page on Gibson. And if they do have any holds, to check for them now, actually, so that they can get them taken care of. And those can be holds like immunization record holds, or sometimes accounts receivable holds. So they might need your help in working through those holds. We want students to use their DegreeWorks audit, and we're going to take a look at a DegreeWorks audit, because that's going to help them understand what requirements they will have to complete by the time they graduate, and it will help them kind of plan for their future semesters. And they can run what we call what-if audits if they're trying to figure out maybe what different major requirements or minor requirements look like as they plan their schedules. We also want students to make sure that they're preparing ahead of time by making planners and including a lot of backup courses in case the courses that they have on their plan that they really want to get into may be full and they might need to get on a wait list. We want them to have backup courses in case that happens. Like Sarah said, we always want them to remain flexible and just have a lot of options so that they feel like they can create a schedule that will work for them. We do want them to meet with their major advisor if they've already decided on a major or are considering a major, or consult with the catalog and website of that department to see what the requirements might be for those majors or minors ahead of time. And then we want them to register on time when their time ticket opens and be flexible. And, you know, within all of this, this whole timeline, they should meet with their advisor as well, so that we can help them just plan a really great schedule with a lot of options so that when they hit that submit registration button, they feel like positive and good about their schedule.
Thanks, Tamar. Okay, so we're going to do a very quick demonstration. So I'm going to switch over, and of course, all the Zoom thingamajiggies are in the way. Here we go. Okay, so when your student logs into Gibson, it's going to look a little bit something like this. And they'll have a home page with some announcements and campus news and things like that. And then their student tab is really the repository of all things that are related to registration. So the first thing at the top they will see is any kind of urgent, important messages related to both registration and anything that any actions that they need to take. So if your student has a hold, which our dummy student here does not, but your student would see a hold message right at the top. Also, in a blue banner, they're going to see their registration time ticket for the fall and summer term. This particular student's registration time ticket is open, so it looks like it will look like for your students at the end of April when registration is open for everybody at the end of the process. There are sometimes other messages in this case. We always want to make sure we have the best emergency contact for your student in the system. And so this student hadn't updated their mobile phone number because they are not a real student. So they are getting that message. And of course, Tulane likes to broadcast the balance right at the top of this page, and the student looks like she has a little work to do on that. The next thing we'll see here that we want to make sure you're pointing out, you're aware of as a great tool is the DegreeWorks audit. And so this student, again, not being a real student, has a great number of advisors. I think this is all advisors that have ever existed at Tulane for at least many years. But your student's advisor would be listed right here. And I think it's an active link to the email system. So it's a very easy way for them to check who their advisor is. And if they have any major advisors, it's also listed there. If they're a pre-health or a pre-law student, their pre-health or pre-law advisor would also be listed there. And then they can click here to view audit. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you an audit real quick. I need to click into this link over here. Are you all seeing the audit now, Tamar? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So the audit here is like Tamar mentioned, a great tool for planning. It's obviously one of the key tools that advisors use to help them navigate the registration advising appointment. They'll review this before the appointment and then be ready to kind of make some determinations with your student. I'm not going to go over the audit in detail, but because it takes a while to explain, but you can see that it's pretty clearly lined up, and it has some really great narrative here on the right side that gives the student advice about what's left in their degree in that particular area. So just a simple example, minimum credits for the degree. This student has completed 9 credits. And so it is saying that it's giving us the advice that we need 111 more to reach the 120 credits minimum for this particular degree that I'm running the audit for. In this case, to be a Bachelor of Arts in History. You can also see the advisors are listed here as well. And then the degree audit proceeds to explain to students what they have what their requirements are for core curriculum, proficiency requirements, foreign language, the core distribution, and then it will pivot into the major, school and major. At the very end, there are other pieces of the puzzle there related just to overall degree requirements. That feature that Tamar mentioned where students can check out whether or not they are able to pivot to a different major or explore a different option is called the what if audit. And students can plug in the data that they are thinking about in terms of the major or minor program that they are thinking about adding, and run a what if audit. It's called process what if, and it will help them think about future planning. Let's see, one last thing I like to mention about the audit is that it defaults to these two sections here are checked. And that basically means that the audit is assuming that the student is going to be successful in all classes that they are currently registered for, including in-progress credits this semester and future term credits that they're registered for. So sometimes students change their registration or drop classes or don't pass classes, unfortunately. And in those cases, then of course, the audit will have given them the advice based on their assumption, the assumption that they'll complete the credits successfully. So it's important to understand that distinction. All right, and then switching back over to this window here, I just want to show you the schedule of classes. So if you haven't seen this tool already, this is another thing that's available through the Gibson portal on the left side under the student tab. It's also an open website. You can go to classschedule.tulane.edu from Mars if you wanted, and you could still access it. You don't have to be a Tulane affiliate to see this system. Now your students will be logged into the system and they'll be able to see different things. So your students can search for classes in lots of different ways. They can search by subject area, curriculum requirements. If they know the course title or course ID, then they can plug those things in. There's also a great number of ways to filter classes. You can filter for level. So our students would be filtering for undergraduate. You can filter for campus. The vast majority of our classes for this fall will be uptown, although my understanding is that we will have some distance learning options, very limited options for the fall distance learning. Another great tool for students to use is to search for open classes as opposed to all, because then the search results will only show classes with available seats. They can search by instructor if they've really connected with an instructor this year that they want to try to see if they can take another class with. They can see if that instructor is listed and then find all the classes that they'll be teaching. These last two items are used more for other areas of the university, course type and part of term. So I just typically tell students to ignore those. You can also filter for times, which is neat. Often if a student has a really heavy Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule, then they can search for just classes in a certain area that meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays, as an example. We mentioned co-requisites. So I'm going to use our lovely chemistry department as an example here. So our general chemistry course, Chem 1070, is a course with multiple sections, and you can see that there are several for the fall. So let's say that I'm going to add that class, and it will then show up on my planner. Now there's a note on that course, a couple different notes here. The co-requisite for the course is listed. Now, when you see that, that's a key for your student to make sure that they are adding the co-requisite for that class. And we'll go ahead and see if we can find a co-requisite that makes sense. Oh, one other thing, a lot of students get tripped up on, probably not students who've been around the block at Tulane for more than a semester, but R means Thursday in class schedule talk. It's not always very evident for students, but I'm going to go ahead and add a Monday afternoon co-requisite lab, and then you can easily see that lab and lecture combo on my schedule. So I'm starting to build a planner. Let's see, I am not logged in, I don't think, on this, but if I was, I think I can, hold on. I want to show multiple planners tomorrow, like you talked about. See if it lets me. No, I don't think it will. But if I was, oh, it did. Great, awesome. So if I was, I think, a very discerning and careful planning student, I would make probably more than one planner. I would probably make like 2, 3. Some students go crazy and they make like 7 or 8. I think that's a little extreme, but it can be fun to plan and dream. But all you have to do is click that little plus sign and then name it, and then click check, and then check it, and it's there. So let's say in this alternate universe, I'm a philosophy student, so I'm going to be adding not chemistry. I don't know why I just did that. I'm going to be adding intro to philosophy and not chemistry. And I'm going to chew on that for a couple weeks after my advising meeting and think about what I'm going to end up registering for. The planner is just a planner. This is not registration. So in this student example, it's not a great example because the time ticket is open. So again, your students, it will say your time ticket will open on April 15th at 3:30 in the afternoon. And that's 3 o'clock. They're on the hour, I think. So it will say that. And so then if I'm a student and my time ticket isn't open yet, I'm not going to be able to actually register for the class. But in this instance, I am. My time ticket is open and I can submit the registration. As Tamar mentioned, if there's a waitlist option and the class is full, the student will see it in this drop-down menu and they'll be able to go ahead and waitlist for the class if there's a waitlist option. If there are alternate classes, though, I do recommend strongly that your student look for different options. So I'm going to go ahead and submit the registration, add my zombie student to this class, and I'm going to go ahead and now I will see it as an actual registration for the semester. It's showing up in my current schedule as opposed to my planner, and that's an important sort of distinction between those things. All right, I think that's enough of a demo. Let's go back over to our slides. And let's see, Tamar?
Yeah, so just to kind of like reiterate that this is kind of a first pass that students make when they register when their time ticket opens. There's time to adjust before the start of the semester because the registration stays open once their time ticket opens up. And you know, if they do change their mind about a class or about kind of the trajectory that they're going on and decide to pivot to a different major even, our curricula are very flexible. Our core is kind of created so that students can, you know, take classes in different areas, check them out, and then and kind of not like waste any classes. There's always room for students to take classes just for fun as well. So we want them to just kind of use the core curriculum to explore a little bit and know that, you know, nothing is set in stone when they make their schedule for the first time, when their registration opens. There are 4 months before the start of the fall semester. The first 2 weeks of every semester are a drop add period. We usually don't recommend that students wait until the second week of the semester to add a new class because we'll have missed a significant amount of class at that point and it's really challenging to catch up. But within that first week of classes, it's usually okay to change a class if one isn't working out. And if there's room in another class to just jump in, you know, let the professor know that they just added it, see what they need to do to catch up. And then usually it's pretty smooth sailing from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so we have some advice for you all and in terms of how you can support your students. One tidbit is that we want you to, you know, have a conversation with your student, remind them that registration is coming up, reflect with them about what classes they've enjoyed this year, what they excel in, and what areas they're thinking about exploring next. Things that require your support also are things like summer school and study abroad and those kinds of things that might require some financial support, for instance. It's important for your student to have a sense of what options exist for them and with your particular family circumstances. And so this is the time to have that kind of conversation. Help your student remember to make that advising appointment. Those appointments do get booked up. And so it's really important for your student to book that appointment themselves very soon, if they haven't done it already. If they have something urgent, let them know about that advisor of the day service. It's a great place for them to go for urgent and quick questions during the day. And remind your students to be patient and flexible. Help your student manage their expectations, encourage them to seek help from advisors when they feel stuck. It is really common for first-year students to feel a little frustrated at the registration that happens right in their first semester of registering at Tulane. They might not have gotten many of their first choice classes, and that's a great opportunity for them to reconnect with their advisor, look for different options, talk about the strategies around potential wait lists, and then move forward from there. Tamara?
Yeah, so I would just add to that actually that if your student isn't able to see their advisor before their registration, encourage your student to still register for their classes and then meet with their advisor right after so that they can adjust their schedule if needed. It's not too late after their registration time has happened. But don't delay when they actually hit that submit registration button if they can't get in to see their advisor. So we just wanted to kind of give you another, roundup of the resources that we use and that we want students to use, and that you can also see sometimes. The DegreeWorks audit, which is accessible through the students' Gibson portal. You won't be able to access that unless your student gives you permission to, or shares their password with you, which, is between you and them. The calendar. So the academic calendar is on the registrar's website, and we highly recommend that every student bookmarks that so that they know when all the important dates throughout the semester are happening. The class schedule is open. You can be on Mars and view it and see, what classes are being offered. We also have our summer schedule up on that on the class schedule now, and students will be able to register for summer classes at the same time that their time ticket opens for the fall. So students can I don't know if we actually show that, Sarah, but you can change the term to show the summer schedule. There we go. Yeah. So change term to 2021 summer. There we go.
Ta-da.
Ta-da.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Great. And then the catalog, the university's catalog is on our website at catalog.tulane.edu. There's a lot of really important information and really great information on there that we refer to all the time, especially around majors and minors and all of the Newcomb-Tulane College policies and procedures. Our website, advising.tulane.edu, also has a lot of information, including links to all of these resources. So that's a really good one-stop shop, basically. If a student doesn't know where to go, they can always go to that website. And then the academic program pages, which are on our website, they will, it's a listing of all of the majors and minors that are available to students with links to the catalog, major and minor description and the requirements for each program, as well as a link to the department's website. So that's a really, it's kind of a fun page to explore if the student is exploring different majors. And then the FERPA release form is available on our website. This is the FERPA. FERPA stands for Family Education. Oh, I'm going to mess it up. Sarah.
Federal Education Rights and Privacy Act, I think.
Thank you.
Yes.
So basically, it's a federal law that protects the student's educational record and prevents us from sharing information about anyone's educational record with anyone but that student. So if you contact your student's advisor and they say, I'm sorry, there's no FERPA release on file, so I can't talk about the specifics, your student can fill out this form if they would like to.
Okay, I got it wrong. Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. You're right. Sorry. Awesome. Okay, let's see. Oh yeah, we want to plug this webinar for your students next week. We're offering 2 sessions. Tamar and another advisor, Maddie, will be running it next week at 2 different times on Tuesday and Wednesday at 3 and 5 respectively. And for first semester students in particular, this is a really helpful program for them to opt into, and we really recommend students register for that webinar, one of those webinars next week. And that they have an email in their inboxes this week about that. Also, okay, so here comes the interactive portion of our session. If you have your phones available, you can take the camera part of your phone out, or open up the camera and scan this QR code. That's the appointment link, make an appointment link for your students to make an appointment with their advisor. You can scan it, to get the website, and then text your student to help them remember to make an appointment. That's the interactive section. And then part 2 is we'd love feedback about this webinar, and we're going to pivot to Q&A in a minute. But so I'll go back. That was kind of quick. So take an appointment, make an appointment link, send that out, and maybe we can pause and I'll switch to feedback in a minute after we do the Q&A, if that works for Penny.
Yes. Okay, so we are going to try to take as many questions as possible, and I will look through these and pitch them over to Tamara and Sarah to see how many we can get through this evening. So one was, do students have a webinar to learn how to do this? So yes, so you've heard about that, so that's great. One other question is, how can students view their grades? I think you kind of mentioned that already.
Yeah, let me toggle over to Gibson. I think I should be able to see that in here. So
should be below degree works audit. Keep going down. Yeah,
here,
my schedule of grades.
Yep, right there. And I was actually looking for the unofficial transcript tomorrow.
Oh yeah, that's another good one. But if they have midterm grades, they'll show up on that in that area at the bottom of their student page.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the unofficial transcript records midterm grades.
Yep. And not all professors post midterm grades. So right now there may or may not be grades available for your student. But I always like to point out to students that the unofficial transcript is a really great way, and it's an elegant way of looking at like their academic history and what their transcript would actually look like.
So another question for you is, my daughter says that when she views her audit, next to the requirements, she sees a list of classes that would fulfill them. However, a lot of times when she searches for the class, it's not being offered. Does that mean it's not being offered just in spring 2021 or not more at all? So how can a student kind of navigate that issue?
It's a great question. It kind of depends on the requirement, but for sometimes, basically, when you click on a class, it's going to take you to the course description for that class. Let me see if I can find an example. Here, let's say I need to take a lab science and I decide I want to take Earth is a Living Planet. And are you seeing that course description? Mm-hmm. Okay, so in this case is a bad example because it is being offered in the fall. So it's going to tell me that and tell me the times. It often is going to give me also a course description, but let's look for one that is never offered. Yeah. I was going to do that. That read my mind. Astronomy is never offered. Now, how would you know that?
Once
if you were a student.
Yeah.
Sometimes in this hyperlink, you see when the class was offered. You see the history. Let's see if we can find one with that example.
You can actually see that if you go to the schedule of classes.
Mm-hmm. And you can see that here with English 1010 is a good, oh, that's just the classes for this next semester. You can see that in the schedule of classes. Okay, let's take a peek. Anyway, yeah, we could go on and on, but and where do you see it, Tamara?
There.
Here? Yes, terms offered in the schedule of classes. So it's a little difficult to get to. Your advisor should be able to give you that. The advisor should be able to give your student that detail. Does that make sense?
Okay, let's take another question. And it's a little bit related to that one, I think. Are there certain classes that are only offered in the fall or only in the spring, and they're required and would impact a student if they wanted to study abroad in the future?
Yeah, it's a great question. There are the vast majority of student classes that are only offered in the fall or spring sequence are courses in the lab sciences. So mostly our general chemistry 1 is only ever offered in the fall. General chemistry 2 is only ever offered in the spring. Same with organic chemistry 1 and organic chemistry 2, and physics 1 and physics 2. So it's that pre-health, all those pre-health courses that our students have to take, that sequence is really important. So it's in the instance of a pre-health student who's thinking about studying abroad in the fall of their junior year, which is the typical timeline, it's that physics sequence that can be somewhat problematic. In most cases, students will either take physics in their sophomore year together with organic chemistry, which is challenging, or they'll take it in the summer, or they will take it senior year and take a gap year. So there are some instances where that can delay impact, study abroad can impact, and that fall spring sequence can trip things up. Now there are other areas where there is a fall spring, a fall only offering, or a spring only offering, but those are typically upper level classes in the major. Economics, ecology and evolutionary biology come to mind, that have some classes that are only offered in one semester or the other. And so typically when students declare their major in their sophomore year, they're going to get advice around sequencing those courses from their major advisor.
So since you mentioned major advisor, once students decide the major, how do they get a major advisor? Are they assigned or do they choose?
Tamara, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so when a student declares a major, they'll go to that department, and that department will assign their advisor. If they are declaring a major in the School of Science and Engineering or the School of Liberal Arts, they have the faculty advising model. So that department will assign a faculty advisor as their major advisor. If they're declaring a major in business or in architecture or public health, they'll get one of the professional advisors that work within those schools. And so the business school has, I think, 3 or 4 advisors, and I don't know how they assign them exactly because they change it sometimes.
It's by major.
By major. Okay. So if they're a finance major, they'll be with a certain advisor. If they're a management major, they'll be with a certain advisor. The School of Public Health, I think they have 2 maybe advisors, and I don't know how they decide on that, but they will be assigned by that department.
A couple of people have asked if this is being recorded because they joined late, and so yes, this webinar will be recorded, and all registrants will receive an email early next week with a link to the video and a PDF of the slides. So we'll take another few questions because it's approaching an hour. So let me see about which ones we might do. I think you may have answered this in the content, but just to double check, do double majors have an advisor in both major as well as having their Newcomb-Tulane College academic advisor?
Yes.
Yes.
The minors don't have a technical advisor, but if you have a question about your minor requirements, usually students consult with the chair of that program.
And this next question may have misunderstood what you said. If I remember correctly, Sarah, you said that sometimes students can be reassigned an advisor, but it's not automatic after a first year, or would you like to clarify?
Yep. So sometimes we're able to maintain continuity with students more than 1 year, but it's most typical for a student to switch advisors every year. The reason for that is, like I mentioned, we have to have balanced caseloads, and it's really important that advisors have enough bandwidth to work with all of their students individually. And sometimes during every year, an advisor's caseload can be, you might graduate more students than somebody else, and so then we have to make sure we're doing some balancing. Now, if students need to or are concerned about their advisor assignment, they can email this address right here on the screen, advising@tulane.edu, and basically request a different advisor if they aren't happy with their advisor assignment. What
would happen with fall registration if students are planning to study abroad but their study abroad program is canceled.
Yep.
You address that.
So if we're talking about for this year, 2021, both this past fall and spring and then this coming fall, all of our students who are planning on studying abroad are also allowed to register for classes at Tulane. And so when registration opens, they'll be able to register for their regular 16 credits, and then it will get bumped up to 19 after priority registration is over. And in addition, they'll be registered for that study abroad placeholder by the university, I believe. And so the university recognizes that this is a very difficult time for students who are considering study abroad, and thankfully have been able to be pretty gracious in allowing students who are thinking about studying abroad or have committed to studying abroad but want a backup option to also register. And as advisors, we're definitely recommending that students who are thinking about studying abroad are also registering for fall classes at registration, so that yeah, if stuff falls through, as we know this year has been so hard, they're not also having to scramble and find classes after they've canceled their program or whatever.
And you advise that they go ahead and do that now so they can claim those spots and get the schedule composed.
Yes.
So that it's already there in case the study abroad.
I mean, that I think that's always wise. Yeah.
One question is, how does a student find out how to search for summer classes? And if I understand correctly, it is in those drop-down menus. They toggle those controls to the year and the term, and that's how they'll find.
Yep. But there's also a really great website for summer school.
Yes.
And so I'll point that out. Now, I think there was a question in the chat about summer transfer credit. Tamara, you want to take that question while I'm pulling this up?
Sure.
Transfer credit, like how would a student navigate getting transfer credit approved?
Yeah, so students should definitely meet with their advisor if they're thinking about taking classes at another school. It would have to be a 4-year college or university. Students cannot take classes and transfer them back to Tulane through a community college. So they should definitely work with their advisor. The advisor can help them, figure out what classes could be evaluated by the different departments, but basically the student would have to get a syllabus for that class. We would give them some paperwork to then take with the syllabus to the Tulane department to have that course evaluated. The departments decide whether or not the class can be transferred in, as long as it's at a 4-year college or university.
Okay, I'm going to do just a last couple of questions, and I'll just offer that if you want to give any feedback here in the Q&A box, you could do that, but we will also send you, along with that email that you'll get from parents@tulane.edu, so watch for that in your mailbox. We are going to include a very quick short survey to get some feedback as well about this. So here's the question. What if a student took a gap semester this spring? Will they still have to declare a major at the end of their sophomore year, even though they're a semester behind?
No, that's a great question. So 2 thoughts. One is, if the student is not an active student this semester, they need to work with their advisor to get reactivated so that they can register for classes. So have them make an appointment with their advisor if they haven't done that already. And no, declaration is required by basically towards the end of the 4th semester before a student is registering for the 5th semester. So it thinks about semesters and not just class status and those kinds of things. Now, there's no penalty for declaring a major early. So students can declare a major ahead of that towards the end of their 4th semester. And one last thing is, all of the summer school classes at Tulane this year, again, are going to be completely online and virtual. Just wanted to mention that in case people weren't aware.
Is there a place that a student can make a 4-year proposed plan of classes if you wanted to, if they're, thinking ahead and want to scope out everything?
So not yet, not in the system. It's coming potentially as soon as this fall. And we're building that in coordination with the registrar as we speak. But many of our students will take everything from their audit and plug it into an Excel spreadsheet, and then they'll work with their advisor to make sure that plan looks good with regards to core curriculum and overall degree requirements, and then consult with the catalog or their major advisor to like figure out where their major requirements are going. And so, yeah, that I recommend that students do that, and I love helping students do that. It is something that takes a little more time than that 30-minute appointment. So we like students to go and do that work on their own, make their best effort at it, and then do the tweaking and editing of it with their advisor.
Maybe come prepared with specific questions where they see, oh, okay, these things collide, or this is where I'm really stuck in understanding what I would do here. I think that the more prepared students can be before they reach you, the better. So if they've already,
absolutely,
their
reminder when they book an appointment, their reminder email reminds them to bring a list of questions, to review their audit, prepare is always helpful to have a really productive meeting. Now, if they're panicked or in a crisis, I mean, we're not, licensed therapists, but we are trained to listen to students and deal with crisis and issues that are coming up that relate to the academic situation at hand. So it's okay if they're going to be punished or hopefully penalized by that. But yeah.
And I think that they also learn as they go to be more proficient at understanding both what's expected of them and learning how to manage the relationship with the advisor. And so they get more efficient at it as well, I believe. And so we did invite parents of first-year students and spring scholars who are experiencing their very first semester. We may have some parents here on the webinar whose students are a bit farther along than that. But I do think that they grow into this. So it is a new experience. It's not being done for them. But I think that what I like to tell parents to remind your students is that we have all these wonderful resource people at Tulane, but they do have to make the effort to cultivate those relationships and seek out, different advisors and, all of our staff who help in a variety of ways. And that the more they get used to learning how to navigate through those relationships and make the most of them, the more help they will get. So I think I will just look for one last question. Just remind everybody again, in case you still came in late, that yes, this is going to be recorded and we'll send you the link. I see a couple of questions about residence hall move out. And so again, this in this session, we're just focusing on academic preparation and course registration. There will be some other tutorials, pre-recorded tutorials for parents that will be available at parents.tulane.edu in the archive. So look for that information towards the end of this week and or early next week. Your students have also already been sent some information about that. So check in with them and remind them to check their emails. So I'll just ask if Sarah or Tamara have any last piece of advice you'd like to offer or good reminder. Any of you? Either of you?
I think that reminder to have students check their email is a good one.
Yeah. And encourage your students if you feel like they need extra support around registration to register for one of those webinars next week if they're available, and also schedule that advising appointment now. So can't hurt.
Well, thank you, parents. We do appreciate your interest and your engagement with us this evening, and we wish your student the best through this process, and hope that you now feel that you are armed with more information so that you can be supportive and help encourage them so that they can take on more of this responsibility and make use of these great resources. So I would especially like to thank my colleagues for doing this with us this evening and wish all of you a good evening. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Penny.
Bye-bye. Thank you.